Yeah, so nice to meet you all. I'm Sebastaan. You may have seen me if you've been here before in October. I was here. That was like my first week in Austin. My wife and I just moved here from Singapore. I'm originally from Belgium, but moved here after like 10 years in Singapore. Past 4 months, I'm ashamed to say I haven't done that much coding, but that's because I didn't come to the meetups, and I'm trying to change that by going to meetups, forcing you to code, prepare something. So I wanted to share a little project that I did last year before moving here that I thought was really fun, and it kind of came out of experience with Webpack. I think she was working on a Webpack project, and we sort of got into this, this frustration and this discussion about how painful it is to work with all these tools that we have to set up for our front-end development. And we were like, well, at the end of the day, the browsers now support ES modules like ESM, like you can do the export import syntax. Like that just works in the browser. They were the first ones to adopt it. Why can't we just use that? And so how hard can it be to just take your current code, which is like required, or if you're doing export import, why can't you just run that in the browser? Well, the problem is your node modules. So you do npm install, you pull in the package. Now that package just sits in some folder called node modules, and that's not easy to transpile everything over. That's what Webpack does. That's why it's such a huge thing. But we kind of put a proof of concept together, and then I kind of polished it a little bit. And I've been using it on a project where it's 50 lines of code, and it does all of that. It does all that transpilation. And I'll just pull it up. Which browser is it? Canary Good? Is it open? Oh yeah, it's just. So. It's called Unbundle. Let's keep it. So yeah, I published a day ago. That's because I just patched some stuff and reload a little bit. But basically, it's a little command line tool.
Yeah, command plus. Like
oh, is it super tiny? Yeah, of course. Better?
Yeah.
So it's just a command line tool. It's called Unbundle. You give it an entry point, which is sort of like where your application begins, and then it'll start tracing all of the files that are importing. So if you're doing like import widget down here from widget, like if you do familiar with the path syntax, so this implies that it's a local file in your own directory called widget.js or widget.mjs or could also be a directory called widget that may have like an index.js or that might have a package JSON that refers to even other things. So that tracing itself is a whole fancy algorithm for it that's described in the Nodejs documentation. And luckily, there's an implementation called there's an NPM package called Resolve, which just does it for you. So same thing, moment. This one comes from node modules, and so there's like in there's another package JSON in your node modules /moment, which will point to the entry file. And then there's the dynamic syntax, which is this is called at runtime. So it's really hard to support this fully because yeah, you could have like a path that's like math.random, times 1000 and then just import that. Like obviously you can't do that, but as long as you're doing sort of a string literal, it'll support it. And then also does the exports, obviously it's required. So let me just show you the code first. You should all use GitLab, it's very nice. So
yeah. Fit on the screen.
Sorry?
It'll fit on the screen.
Ah, almost, yeah, almost. No. Almost. But basically, I'm using something called Recast, which uses Babel internally, and then that magical resolve algorithm. So I'm really like 50 lines that's standing on the shoulders of giants here, right? But this is all it is, and then this is a separate file for the command line. But Recast is a code modding thing, which means that you're parsing source code, transforming source code, and then writing it out again. And if you're familiar with that whole computer sciencey thing, there's ASTs, there's like abstract syntax trees, and you usually have something called a visitor for AST. So you have a visitor function here, this guy, and it just sort of it walks across the tree of your source code. So it walks across every. If this was the actual input, for example, then it would go over like there's a function here. It's called process. It's got an argument. It's called source. Another one called process, and it's got an if statement. So it goes step by step, and you can just intercept things and do stuff to them. And so I've created a couple of visitors that all call the visitor function, and it just looks at any kind of import, any of these static import syntaxes, and the export ones, of course. And it just changes the path, and that's all it touches. And then other than that, all your source code just remains in place. So, sure.
Backing up for a second, is this like meant to be like a tool chain for client side software development as
Correct.
a replacement for Webpack?
Yes. Yes. That's a vastly simplified version of Webpack. But I'll just do a little demo to see to show you what it does. What are we looking at here? This guy. Do this later. So we're in a folder called temp. I'm going to create our app. So, okay. So I'm just going to console log something. What am I typing? Oh, yeah. Tim Toady. So then we need to pull that in from our homepage. Script. Anyone know how to use the modules in your browser? That's right. Thank you. And source app.js, I think, yeah. Yes, something like that. And then we can call that index.html. Okay, so now that's the basics. So this doesn't actually import anything, but just want to see that it actually runs. We've got the folder here, blah.
Your app.js has 2 dots.
You were right. Thank you. Ta-da. Thank you. All right, so anyway, let's just set up a little private NPM package here. I'm just going to run a little basic static HTML server so it can serve this as a localhost thing. And that should be, yeah, I'm just going to do that. So we should be serving that directory here. Oh. Where's the browser again? And then this should have appeared in the console with hello world. Okay, there he is. Can you see that? Is that super tiny? Yeah. Okay, so that hasn't demonstrated Unbundle at all yet. But we've got a starting point. So there's one caveat with this system. It only works for ES modules. It doesn't do the other thing that Webpack does, which is to transpile all the old school require stuff. But I don't care about the past, I want to live in the future, and I'm creating that.
And it doesn't uglify, which will explode like 90% of the time. Right?
You mean like minification stuff?
Yeah,
Or amplify as a tool? No, I used to have a thing that did that, and it was horrible to do everything in one tool. Unix philosophy, way to go. Use other tools. You can use like Bible minify or uglify or anything like that. You can use that separately on a file by file basis. But there's a bunch of really popular packages. So I went through like the top whatever popular packages I could find and tested them all out, just sort of manually. And quite a few, surprisingly, like I can be using Vue.js. It works out of the box because they're awesome. React, not awesome. But there's Preact. You could try that if you want to go for that whole thing. I've got pull requests. A few of them I opened. Some others are just +1. Just to try to make those packages work. Because essentially, all they have to do is write ES 2015 plus syntax. And that's it. And they can transpile to the legacy stuff like Webpack. So, okay, let's take a look at G3. It's a nice little visual demo thing. So this is like a data viz funny library thing. So you can, they tell you, oh, you can just pull this from a CDN, la la la. We are awesome, and we use that. We use the export import syntax. So import has to go before any kind of statement. It's the law. And then let's just take some of their examples on the homepage. These are always cool. Yeah, let's make some stuff. Generate a bunch of paragraphs in the DOM. Okay. What else did I do? Update. I think I have transition. Yeah, sure. Put some transition in there. Okay. Indentation matters. Is there anything better here? We'll randomly color paragraphs. That sounds cool. Let's try that. Come on, guys. Okay. So now this. Did I just? Oh, you have some kind of auto format thing?
Oh, but you're saving .js again because.
Oh, it didn't.
Yeah, so you gotta copy this.
Okay, I gotta delete this. Okay. Sorry, I'm really
This is how
slow at this kind of
that
stuff.
looks.
Okay, so anyway, this should do stuff, but obviously if we, no, well, I think it's creating them. I don't know enough D-tree to figure that out. So in the console, do we have errors?
P to P at least.
What are we loading here?
It was finding all paragraphs.
What was it?
Paragraphs.
It wasn't creating anything, but
It was just selecting them and doing separate.
If you just put like a P tag and then.
should we have some errors already?
Probably. I think it worked. It just worked on that.
I'm wondering if we have some kind of caching issue. Can I move this?
All paragraphs.
Oh, there he is. Sorry, I'm a Safari guy. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it doesn't work because it's just importing D3 and the spec says that's not allowed. You have to have like a path or a URL or something like that. So we'll get to the other one. What was everyone shouting at me? It's not creating them?
Probably did paragraph. Probably also needed
Oh, it's selecting them. Is there anyone that's creating them? Your paragraphs create. Is there like a.
Well, it seems like you haven't imported it. Can you pull it from the CDN?
Oh, yeah, but
We don't want to.
so okay, I'll just install it and see. Okay, so that. Do I get another shell? Zoom in, cameraman. Okay, so if I do unbundle and D3, this will take a few seconds, but now it's pulling down both of the dependencies. And if I run unbundle entry app.js, destination public, because it makes a copy of the files. A rubbish version of Node is this?
Node.js.
Latest, man, latest. 13. Well, 13.9, it just came out yesterday, I think. All right. So like, the other stuff that we installed probably hopelessly corrupted by now.
Rebuild.
Oh, it did install, right? Oh, yeah. I didn't have to install it. We'll see. Okay, and then I need to copy my index over to public. And then I'm going to restart my little web server because it's serving the current directory and it should be serving the public directory. So it automatically picks that up. And it's now loading all these little files, see?
What?
And not doing anything. There's no P's in it.
You need a P, yeah.
So what is that code actually doing? Because I just copy paste. What do you mean after? Oh, this is so lousy.
So isn't this like sort of like the way that AMD modules used to work, or like
Yeah.
Because like
Oh yeah, but no.
it's like I had to learn them a while ago, and then I never used them after like one project. What am I thinking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now what you have is you have app.js, and notice how it changed. So Unbundle rewrote the little D3 to a path.
Yeah.
Node modules D3 and Nextjs. And we have a folder here. This is in Chrome, right? So this is like all the things that the browser loaded, all of these 500 something that I saw. So it's loading D3/Nextjs, and then just basically rewrote all these paths, but it didn't touch anything else.
Yeah.
So with AMD, the old school, you had to sort of follow the AMD thing and live in its world. And now it's no, it's just this is JavaScript, and this is still totally JavaScript, and it's not doing like all this __Babel loader and whatever. none of that. You don't need source maps to understand this.
Yeah.
You could. I mean, you could have source maps that just change it into, they'll probably just trim off this thing or whatever, or just change this into a T3 array or something. Right? But even without it, it just saves you so much complexity and overhead when you're doing your tooling that I found this to be quite easy. You can just go through and nothing else is changed from the original source code. And it's actually loading these files. It's not like fake showing these files from some crazy giant source map blob or whatever. You'll find all the original source code in here. And this just works with all these different packages. And any standard ES package should work with that as well.
Is there a way to do like sub-resource integrity for modules that are imported like this? Because like if you were doing the script tags, you tell the browser, this is the hash I expect.
So sub-resource integrity is where you take a hash of the file and you put it into like the script tag.
Yeah.
I don't remember how to do it for imports.
Yeah.
Is it with a header? Does anyone know?
Is it possible?
Yeah. Yeah, I looked at this a few times and I always forget everything.
That'd be cool.
There might be a way, but so that's another example of like, you can now build a small tool that just does that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make it like a Webpack plugin. You can just be a tool that just hashes a file, which is like probably like a 5-line bash script or something.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to get to. I want to make little composable tools that do these things. So one for minification, one for SRI, and one. I've got another one that just then traces this again and turns into like a server push manifest.
Yeah.
That just uses HTTP 2 or 3 server push to like essentially concatenate it on the wire, and then you're not actually wasting time making all these 500 round trips. So just like flush it down once and then serve all the assets with the plugins afterwards. So yeah. Anyway, this is sort of the tool I've been working on. If you're interested in it, there's actually a little. I use it for my little dashboard for my personal project. I have a code base here which uses it. So if you want to do more of a, if you want to compose this with other tools along the lines of what I've just shown, then there's somewhere here where I probably use it. Yeah. Okay, so just I have like a little build step in my package.json scripts, which just takes that and chucks it somewhere. And then like I'm using like some file watching tools, and I'm using server push thing and image minification and whatever else, CSS build tools. But they're all just like simple independent tools that you just compose in your own whichever way to build your own stack without having to make this as complicated as this. You could just use it as just you want to have a little scratch pad to do some D3 in the browser. Yeah, that's about it. So simple tools can do nice things. I wish I got this demo working though. Yeah.
Just throw a couple P's in the issue body.
Just like
But
the world close page.
I looked at this earlier in the afternoon, and I think I copied the wrong snippet or something. There's somewhere where it creates them. Because I had some random stuff show up on the page.
Well, probably it's like anchor them into some tag.
And I didn't change any HTML. I didn't like add a PM even. But,
It might
Oh,
also
there's
be
one
because
body
of
of
the body.
NPM.
Yeah.
Right there.
You may be looking
A little eye.
update and
A little
oh,
more.
here. Oh, these guys. This guy. I mean, I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a body tag.
You're also
think so?
going to be a body type.
Body should automatically be there. No, I say that. I'm not gonna. So. All right. First.
Wait, what just happened?
Oh, it doesn't want to overwrite existing files, so
Okay.
that you don't footprint yourself. So now it overwrote all the files in the public directory. And where's my browser? Hey, we got some stuff.
Oh yeah.
So this is using D3 with all of its 500 little files, and I didn't
And
have to.
changing colors.
Yeah, oh, fantastic! Right? Imagine a value creation here.
Nice.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I wanted to demo. I think I reached out to Matt like a month and a half ago to give a talk because I saw that one meeting was canceled, and I miss meeting more JavaScript people. So that's really why I'm here. And I'll keep doing random side projects like this and giving talks about them if that's what it takes to have this meetup on a monthly basis. But I wish other people also do the same thing. It's really fun to give talks here.
Who here has to like hack node modules on a regular basis because they deal with trash dependencies? Anyway, you guys need post install, like set over top of node modules, fix broken things. I hate that.
I usually end up with a bunch of forked repos. Like
Yeah.
I'll have a branch open and I'll just point to like GitHub/my/fork/the branch. Hash the branch.
I feel like opening a pull request with post install script for people's packages is the most offensive way of telling them to fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How does this compare, like, have you seen Snowpack?
And the Pika thing and all that, right? I haven't used it. I looked at Pika. They do a bit more transpilation, if I remember correctly. I think I had a chat with the guy.
It's of the same spirit, though.
Yeah. That's fine.
Right,
Yeah. I'm a little bit more ruthless about keeping it to like 50 lines and not doing any transpilation whatsoever. So I think in that sense, I'm going to keep it that way, and because I feel like otherwise you risk becoming,
It's a slippery slope.
it's like the Batman Joker thing, right? The two-faced guy. Yeah. But otherwise, it's like a really great project. And if you want to get into something like this, but without taking the full plunge into, like no more hand-holding, yeah, Pika, Snowpack, and I think they're really interesting stuff to work on. They have a little CDN as well that just does it for you. So, yeah, should be good.
I have two questions. It looks like one of the primary things it's doing is like in the ES6 modules, it has relative paths to other modules it's including. And it looks like Unbundle is replacing those relative paths to like absolute paths with like / modules, so that
The output files you're talking about, right? So here.
right, the output file. Right. So like internally, so it looks like Unbundle is changing that /array.js to like /node module //
Yes, correct.
So that seems like primary. Okay, so that was my first question. The second question is, it looks like whenever you're running Unbundle, it's copying those references in the node modules folder from the source directory into a new node modules directory inside public. Is that right?
Yeah.
If you ran it all in the same like root folder and didn't use public, where would it just reference the files in place where they already are in the modules, or would it write something?
It has to transform them.
Yeah, so they have, the tool shouldn't touch files in place because, they sort of belong to someone else, right? Like your node modules is sort of the node modules.
It's aware.
It's making a copy.
I see. So it's aware that you're putting the output file in another directory, and so it knows it needs to copy those source files so that they're relevant. Right.
It can put them wherever you want. I just specified public because I knew that the HTTP server tool would pick that up automatically. But you can put them anywhere you want. You can. There's an option called root, I think, where you can just sort of prefix whatever you want. Also, so if you say that, like, I think in the homepage thing that I showed where I'm using it, I actually put I have like my website /scripts/ and then like my app.js, my index.js, or and then within that scripts I would have my node modules folder in which all of the things get copied that have been transpiled. Is that the second question or the first?
What's that?
So there are two questions. Was that the second?
Oh, that was the second.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Cool.
Good discussion.